Hey everyone, Vanessa here, alcoholic. My sobriety date is October 8th, 2017. And today I'm going to talk about step 12 again. We're going to be reading from Keep It Simple, Daily Meditations for 12 Step Beginnings and Renewal. In front of my face. Today we're going to be reading from the December 2nd reading. And again, for December, we're focusing on this 12th step. So having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we try to carry this message to alcoholics and to practice these principles in all our affairs. Step 12 from Alcoholics Anonymous. So for December 2nd, the reading is, we tried to carry this message to alcoholics, second part of step 12. So in this part of step 12, we carry the message of hope, but it's not up to us if anyone accepts the message or not. This keeps us from playing God. We just gently deliver the message. We don't force the program down people's throats. In general, step 12 tells us, be helpful to those we can help. When a neighbor is sick, do an errand for her. When a friend is in the hospital, visit him. Step 12 reminds us we make a difference. We have hope to give the world, and hope is what we stand for to the addict who still suffers. Hope is what we stand for to the addict's family. How beautiful to stand for hope. Remember when our lives stood for despair? What a change. Prayer for the day. Higher power, help me shine brightly as a symbol of your hope. Action for the day. Today, I'll help someone in need. It may be someone with an alcohol or drug addiction or just someone in need. Yeah, I'll help make the world a better place. So that's a good reading, actually. And it's something that I've been thinking about. Something I always kind of think about is the act of service. I'll go into this in some other videos, but I do think that there's some limitations to this being a solution. And it's kind of a gendered issue, believe it or not. Anyhow, going back to this second part of step 12, we tried to carry this message to alcoholics. What really caught my eye in this reading is this act of playing God, right? Something that really was harmful to my recovery in the beginning was, especially when going through my DUIs, is like back in the day, you used to be court mandated to go to AA meetings. And now they've changed that so that you can go to self-help meetings, which includes 12-step programs, church programs, or mental health therapy type of programs. I think that that's great. When I was being forced to attend AA meetings, I didn't really find it helpful. I wasn't there for the right reasons. And if I'm being honest, it probably caused more harm to the people in those meetings because I wasn't there as a real addict alcoholic trying to get help. I was just there to fulfill a legal obligation, right? And that's kind of harmful to the overall mechanism of what 12-step groups are for. They're not there because somebody forced you to be there. You go because you choose to be there because you're ready to get help. And so I feel like when people now talk about how AA isn't effective, they are forgetting that there are large portions of attendants who are not there on their own will. They're there to fulfill some type of legal, or even maybe their family is forcing them to go. It's always seen as like a punishment. And I just wasn't ready at that time to really hear what the program was trying to tell me. And I wasn't ready to make any changes. Because addicts and alcoholics were kind of stubborn. I don't know. Give me a like if you identify as stubborn, because part of that is, I think, just this fear of doing anything differently, fear of the unknown. And also there is just this fight for independence and for, this is my choice. I'm going to make this my decision that I don't want to do that, or I do want to do that. So when I did finally end up in the Big Book Awakening groups, which go through the steps, the 12 steps of AA, I felt really smart because I was like, oh, look at me. I'm choosing to do this on my own accord. It took me still, another year to actually go through the work. If we feel really good, we feel really smart, we feel really empowered when we show up being like, no, this is my decision, actually. This is my choice. Although, if you really think about it, nobody really chooses to go to a 12-step program. We just have to kind of eventually end up there through a series of unfortunate events, typically. We carry the message of hope, and that's really what we're trying to do. And that's when I am, sitting across from an addict or an alcoholic, or I'm just hearing somebody's story about mental health issues or whatever it is. I just try to leave them with a little ounce of hope, if nothing else, because things do change, things do get better, things can be different. And I feel like difference is really the key word there, the key indicator, because we don't know a lot of times what is good or not, or what is better, especially when we are in such darkness, right? When we are in such despair, when we are in such pain, we may think that good is something that automatically removes that pain, but actually that good is what caused us the pain to begin with, right? And so sometimes I don't want to say good or bad, but something different. Because sometimes breaking that cycle of bad, bad, good, 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 bad, good is like, we're just sick of that. We just need to do something different and begin to kind of live our life on a different basis, on a different foundation, right? So this act of playing God when we are trying to help other people by maybe forcing 12 steps down their throat is not really a good solution. Again, most addicts and alcoholics are not going to be receptive to it, especially if it's provided as some type of like conditional base, like you have to go or else. If it's an ultimatum, like I mean, I suppose it does help some people with like interventions and stuff. I don't know. I'm just speaking from my personal experience. It never really helped me. And so this act of playing God, I try to have compassion for people who are like that, though. I'm not actually a really great evangelical, either with my faith or with 12 steps. I like to just talk about that, and then whoever's interested in it, then I will talk to them about it. But I'm not out there like actively recruiting anyone for anything because I don't really feel like that's my place. Everyone has their own journey, and sometimes that journey doesn't involve um, getting help. Sometimes I think that it's in the cards for everyone, but everyone is choosing their own destiny in some way, shape, or form. And so people who are, this keeps resonating in my head over and over again, like he who has ears, let him hear. And, you know, I just always feel like there's something about something settling right for people and people being receptive and people being willing to opt into solutions, for example. And then other people are just really stuck in fear and unwilling or unable to find hope in a solution that's different from what they're used to, right? So when we are playing God, like God doesn't force anything upon us. God doesn't force anything upon us. And God is also willing to let us have consequences of our actions, right? If there is something that I was just remembering this the other day, I remember before my life completely got turned upside down in 2015 that I was in a pretty toxic and volatile relationship. And I knew that I needed to get out of the relationship, but I just didn't have the power to leave it, right? I remember doing a fast with my church, and I just heard God, and I felt God so clearly over and over confirm to me, this is not the man for you. You need to let this relationship go. I have so much more in store for you if you could just get away from this relationship. And I was like, yes, God, yes, God, yes, God. And then I think the guy got out of jail or something. And that was the only thing that had given me this reprieve, while why I got to connect to God is because he was out of my life while he was in jail. And when he got out of jail, I remember immediately he called me and we were back together very promptly. And I remember while making the conscious decision to answer his phone call, I remember praying to God and asking for forgiveness as I answered that call. And answering that call and what ensued over the next couple months, it led me to one of my rock bottoms where I ended up in jail eventually and having to kind of be introduced to the whole recovery community and everything. But I remember making that conscious decision, and it was just by the grace of God that I got to have the consequences of that. I don't know if I would still be here if I hadn't. Maybe I would have been given another opportunity. I don't know. I can't tell. But even so, God won't force, God didn't like kill that guy so that I was never with him again, right? God was like, okay, if this is what you think that you need, go ahead. Let's just see what happens, and not in a threatening way, but like, all right, this is how you need to learn. And that was how I needed to learn. And same thing with addicts, alcoholics, and the 12-step program. Sometimes people will be like, and sometimes this happens pretty frequently actually, where people are like, oh, what did you do? How did you get sober? I'm struggling. I'm like, oh, I went through the 12 steps, blah, blah, blah. And then they'll be like, oh, okay, well, can you just hear me, bitch and complain for the next 2 months about how my life is miserable? And just, I'm like, what, I'm not here for that actually. But if you do want to get some recovery, I'm happy to help you with like the 12 steps or, get you to a meeting if that's what you want, if you're interested in recovery. But if you just want to kind of like wallow in self-pity in your own miserable life, I'm not here for that, unfortunately. And so making that decision, whereas having to be like, no, the only way that you're going to get any help ever is if you go to a 12-step meeting. I'm not going to talk to you. I'm not going to, it's like being that forceful with something as delicate as recovery. You just really have to let people have their own experience, their own journey. And even people very close to me, I'm like, do you want to do the 12 steps? Like, it's just a question. I know that people get sober other ways. I know that people get sober without ever having to attend a meeting. I don't know how those people did it though. So when people come to me for help, the only way that I can help them is through the 12 steps. I can find people who got sober through, church and maybe refer them there, because that's another opportunity. However, people get sober, let them get sober that way. AA even talks about how they don't have a monopoly on recovery. Anybody can get recovered anyway. They are just giving you and laying out steps for how to do it if that's the way that you're interested in doing it and living your life on a spiritual basis. So this act of playing God also, though, I try to put myself in a sympathetic position of, even though I'm not really good at shoving AA down people's throats, I think that if I did, it would come from a place of fear, because I would be afraid for that person who I'm seeing struggling and who I know that the program could help, but that they are, maybe they're just not there yet. And it can be scary. It is very scary, actually, to see people actively struggling. And they can be sober or not. Actually, I've seen, sober addicts and alcoholics struggling, and it's like, I promise you the solutions in the 12 steps. But, again, if you want the help, I can help you in this way, but I don't know how to help you any other way without enabling the behavior that you're choosing to participate in at this point. And so at that point, it is difficult. And that is where your codependency and boundaries and all that kind of stuff. And honestly, that's where my faith in God has to step in, because I'm like, okay, God, I'm not God, but you're God. I don't have the power to change this person, but you have the power to align things in the way that this person needs so that they get the help that they want, if they want it. That's the other thing. I can't force anybody to want something. Recovery only works when you want it. Changing your life only works when you want it. This act of playing God is not, I'm good at playing God. I'm not good at it, actually. I fall into playing God or pretending or thinking that I'm God in a lot of other situations in my life, but probably not in this specific area. But I do have a lot of compassion for people who do think that AA is the only way to get sober. And they think that by forcing other people to also think that they're helping, but actually it can just be more destructive in the actual long run. So be helpful to those we can help. And I love that this is kind of what I was talking about yesterday, is like, it's more than just the addict and alcoholic that we can help. We can help literally anybody. And if a neighbor is sick, do an errand. If a friend is in the hospital, go visit. They don't need to be addicts and alcoholics that you're helping all the time. It could just be somebody, like, call a friend, ask them how their day was. There have been times where I have gotten a call where I have been struggling. This summer was pretty rough on me. I was struggling with a lot of things, not speaking to my family, my own health stuff, and then Olive passing away, and it was just things and still some grief hitting me, and having to move, and just all this stuff really hit me, right? And I remember getting a couple of calls from friends during that time, and it just was like, and people inside and outside the program, people who I hadn't heard from in like years. And I was just like, oh my God, this was so nourishing to my soul. Like, you have no idea. And the reality is that, and I've reached out to people who I haven't talked to in years, and just kind of just like touch base, and we've got this really good, like, deep connection and conversation. And what's funny about that, in one way, and I don't mean to say it like in a skeptical or critical way, is like, a lot of times those calls are more beneficial for the person who's struggling, like, who has to ask others if they need help, right? Like I talked about in the last video, like, when I'm struggling, the best thing that I can do is try to help somebody else. And so I just like that this is reiterating that here. The basis for this being hope. Sometimes all we need is someone to reflect back to us the hope that we can't see in ourselves. And it's especially helpful to people when they're struggling. It could just be as simple as a conversation or a quick text. I love sending texts. It's like, hey, just thinking about you. Hope everything's good. Oh, that just reminded me. I need to reply to my sponsee. I'm so sorry. I need to do this right now. That was a bad idea, because then I just saw like 5 other texts I need to reply to. I will get back to everyone. This idea, this contrast, this like really makes me want to cry, basically. Remember when our lives stood for despair? What a change. I clearly remember when my life stood for despair. And it's funny because sometimes I'll look at my life now and I just feel like such a mess. Like, I'm just naturally a scattered person. And there are a lot of things that I can do to like be better. Being on time places is still something that I really struggle with. And I just feel like a sense of desperation around that. People think that I'm like trying to be cute or trying to like not be responsible, but it's just an actual problem. Whenever I arrive somewhere just on time, I feel like it's a big thing that needs to be like celebrated. And if I'm really trying to get somewhere early, like I just had lunch with a friend last week and I like timed it so that I would be there like 5 minutes early. And I ended up being there 10 minutes late because of unforeseen GPS circumstances. And so I was like really bummed out and I was like, oh, but anyway, what a change, right? And actually, my tattoo that I have, it says create. And one of the reasons I had that um, tattooed on me is because I had such a life of destruction, right? And just like actual, just the breaking down of things all the time, constantly. And I just wanted to be done with that part of my identity. I just wanted to be done with being that person. And instead, I wanted to create and I wanted to create goodness and give goodness and do things differently. So I love that they talk about how beautiful to stand for hope. Yeah. And that humbling of like, remember when our lives stood for despair? Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I remember it. What a change. So again, the prayer for the day, higher power, help me shine brightly as a symbol of your hope. An action for this day. Today, I'll help someone in need. It may be someone with an alcohol or drug addiction or just someone in need. I'll help make the world a better place. I hope that this was helpful for you. If you want to leave me a comment and let me know how this resonated for you, I would love to read it. I do reply to comments. It takes me a couple days sometimes, but I love reading your guys' comments. I love seeing how this impacts you and where you guys are in your recovery, in your journey. And yeah, that's it. Okay, I love you. Bye.